Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is our year to shine, and speaking of shining, the sun is still shining and it's going on 7 o'clock. What a great feeling with this spring ahead new schedule that we have. Hope you're having a nice weekend. Annabelle and I are on our Sunday personal Sabbath here. She's right with me here for the video. Coming to you with another installment of The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. And this section is the meat of Renee's research. I told you in the intro video that her life's work, well, she's a psychologist also, but her life's research work is about shame. And she talks to us in this section because it's called The Things That Get in the Way. So the things that get in the way of what we've already been talking about: connection, compassion. I always forget one of the C's, courage. And then also being authentic and vulnerable and being enough. That's what we talked about, worthiness last time. And knowing what love is and feeling belonging. So she's talking to us about what gets in the way. Why don't we feel a sense of belonging? Why don't we feel love? And she shares some personal stories. I wish I could read you the whole chapter because, and there's birds in the background, happy in the background, if you're hearing that. I wish I could read the whole chapter to you because this is one to not skip. And it's definitely one that resonates with me a lot. So I will try to make this not into a therapy session. So she tells, like I said, some personal stories about how I think she has a little bit of discomfort in the beginning of her career about being a shame researcher, because it's a little bit different, right? Have you ever met anybody that's a shame researcher? I think in one of her talks she talked about, like, if you ever want to not have to talk to somebody on the plane, just when they ask you what you do, just say that you study vulnerability and shame, and then they'll just shut up, you know? So she talks about how she started to have this sort of freak out over a talk that she was supposed to give, and what was coming up was all this shame that she felt for an experience where she felt like she had just totally bombed this one talk. And rightly so, because on her way out to the stage, the woman who was going to explain what she did said, like, was reading over the bio and then just like on the fly said something like, "You're a shame researcher? Well, that's not why people came to listen to this. Like, don't mention the word shame. Like, this should be all about how you find joy and meaning in your life and all this." And so this is like right before she went out on stage. And obviously, like any person that's going to give a presentation, you know that hours of preparation went into it. And to ask somebody to leave out this key part, like what she's bringing to the table, it was just crazy. And so she did it, you know. I think, you know, now she probably would have held her own and maybe even canceled the engagement to be asked to do that. But in the moment, she went out and she describes it as, you know, she tried to just keep saying that joy was good, be happy, you know, she was just trying to say all these things. But just like I explained about what makes this book different, if you're not going to get to the difficult things, then you're not going to get to the wholehearted living that we're talking about in this book. So she talks about how her husband said to her, like, "What is going on? I've never seen you, you know, you usually are really good about preparing for your talks," because this was a subsequent talk after that one that she felt so much shame over. And so she ended up telling him the story of that talk, which she had never shared before with him. And he was just surprised, you know, like, "Why didn't you ever share that with me? And you've even said before in your books and everything that you can't hide from the difficult things. Like, you have to talk about the hard things." And that's definitely a part of being vulnerable, right? And I told you in last night's video that I have so much fear about doing that in a lot of cases because I have evidence of, say, like losing that friend that I mentioned. And if I have shame about something that, like, it was really hard for me to tell that person to begin with, and then I have evidence that somebody wasn't okay with it and didn't want to be my friend anymore, you better believe that that sticks with me. So she talks about what is called shame resilience. And I don't have that, at least not yet. So here's what she says that she discovered that, like, well, first of all, she said everybody has shame. And it's all a matter of how much resilience to it you have. So these are the things that she found that people that have more shame resilience have. So again, shame, we all have it. Shame is universal and one of the most primitive human emotions that we can experience. The only people who don't experience shame lack the capacity for empathy and human connection. We're all afraid to talk about shame, and the less we talk about shame, the more control it has over our lives. Shame is basically the fear of being unlovable. It is the total opposite of owning our story and feeling worthy. In fact, the definition of shame that I've developed from my research is, shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Ding, ding, ding! That statement is exactly why I struggle so much with that book that we just finished last month. Because I have a deep down feeling that there are flaws and that therefore make me unworthy of love and belonging. And some of my issues go so far back to early life, and 45 years into this life and the compounding of it all have just really, they've really gotten me to a difficult place in the last year and a half, or maybe going on 2 years now. It's not like I'd never had shame before. I always had it, but I guess maybe I had more resilience to it. I don't know. And then I've gotten to the point where it's, yeah, like where if we don't talk about it, the more control it has over us. So it's good that I'm in therapy. Shame keeps worthiness away by convincing us that owning our stories will lend to people thinking less of us. Shame is all about fear. We're afraid that people won't like us if they know the truth about who we are, where we come from, what we believe, how much we're struggling, or believe it or not, how wonderful we are. Because sometimes people, it's just as hard for people to own their own strength as it is their struggles. People often want to believe that shame is reserved for the folks who have survived terrible traumas, but this is not true. Shame is something we all experience, and while it feels as if shame hides in our darkest corners, it actually tends to lurk in all the familiar places, including appearance and body image, family, parenting, money and work, health, addiction, sex, aging, and religion. To feel shame is to feel human. The stories of our struggles are difficult for everyone to own, and if we've worked hard to make sure everything looks just right, in quotes, on the outside, the stakes are high when it comes to truth-telling. This is why shame loves perfectionists. It's so easy to keep us quiet, right? Because we wouldn't want anybody to know that we weren't perfect, right? In addition to the fear of disappointing people or pushing them away with our stories, we're also afraid that if we tell our stories, the weight of the single experience will collapse upon us. There is a real fear that we can be buried or defined by the experience that in reality is only a sliver of who we are. You know, I'm thinking, because recently I watched, remember Elizabeth Smart? She was kidnapped from her home in the early 2000s. And then she was found within 2 years of being taken. And it had come out that she endured daily rape and just horrific things like being starved and chained down, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but she has a couple of documentaries out there, and she's very forthcoming and does talks and everything about her experiences. And I was watching it, and like I was thinking, like, I don't think that I could be that way if all of that happened to me. I don't think I'd want to live anymore. Like, I don't think, like, she now has a family and kids, and actually they said that she didn't even go to therapy. Like, she came home and it was just like her family helped her through everything. And she seems totally adjusted. And as far as talking about it all, maybe that's what takes some of the shame away. I just think everybody's different, though, as far as like what they would endure. I probably wouldn't even have lived through that whole thing. Like, somehow she had resilience, and she kept, you know, thinking that she was going to make it home and everything. I probably would have just given up. That's just my thought of like how I would act if I were in a situation like that. But I can see how there's power in talking about things. Like, also, I was watching a documentary about all the Olympians who came forward about the one physical therapist who was sexually abusing them, and how they told their stories in court. And it's really powerful to watch people break down and say it all. And they were all so supportive of each other, and there were, I think, hundreds of women. So not that it made the hurt go away, but to be acknowledged and be able to say those things in front of a judge and the court, and to be held up by the other people that had gone through it. And probably because a lot of them were younger when it happened, and they really hadn't processed it in a healthy way, you know, to be able to go through it together with other people and to be told, like, that's not your fault, you know, like, you didn't know, you were just a kid. And anyway, I get that there's power in telling your story. I don't think that I will ever be somebody that, and here I am, like, I'm so forthcoming on the channel here, but as far as like the things that I hold really close and that I don't want people to know and that I have shame about, I don't see myself ever talking about those things publicly. I see kitty ears behind me. So I guess small steps. I mentioned that I mean, my close friends that I have now, and of course my therapist, you know my issues. My family knows my issues, but they don't really, my family's just never really been like the kind of family that talks about things or tells you that everything's okay. So I don't consider that to be a help at all. And I think I said last night too that I haven't had any, I mean, aside from my therapist, who probably has to just be positive and everything, I haven't had like the comfort of sharing my story. Like, yes, my friends that I have that know me and everything about me, I know they care about me and they love me, but I haven't, in a romantic, intimate relationship, been able to have the courage to say, like, this happened to me and I'm not okay about this, and I don't ever want anybody to know about such and such or whatever. Like, I just feel like I have too much fear because it's all about this shame. Like, I have this feeling that these flaws make me unworthy of love and belonging. And whoa, what just happened? Something made her jump. Thank you, because you know I was getting too serious. Did you see a bug or something? So this is my main issue. It's not about, like, when I was going into the whole thing about how I was struggling with the last book. this is why. This is the main reason why I feel like I have so much trouble loving myself, because I feel this unworthiness of love and belonging because of the shame. And it's you know, she mentions it later about how people that have shame, that they tend to handle it in different ways, such as sometimes they might be aggressive, they might be violent, they may have depression like I do, they may have addictions, they may have eating disorders like I did, and still probably do in some ways, as far as like now I just eat for comfort. But it's not like shame is just there. It's definitely it's something that affects you in a lot of different ways. And I also think of the movie Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise. And Brené talks about the difference between guilt and shame. And if you saw that movie and you remember the story of what he was trying to live with after the war, and I don't want to, well, I'm going to have to say it. I don't want to totally give it away, but he is not sure if he actually killed one of his unit guys. I don't know what they're called. Because, you know, there was friendly fire and stuff, and he doesn't know if he actually killed the guy, and he's just so riddled with guilt, and he becomes an alcoholic, and of course he's also in a wheelchair, so his life is just, you know, not going the way that he thought, and he just sort of wishes that he just was the one that died, you know. And the most powerful thing in that movie, I cannot watch it without sobbing, is he does go and he talks to the parents of the guy that he's not sure if he's probably responsible for the death. I think he's actually, when I say he's not sure, I think he's probably pretty sure that he did, but he doesn't want to think that. And so he has so much shame, and it's like, Brené says guilt is that you did something bad, shame is that I am bad. So I would think that he feels like he did something bad, but it's translated into I am bad, which again, I mentioned the addiction and the alcoholism and stuff, and so he's struggled with a lot. So in this pivotal scene where he goes and speaks to the family, it's a very beautiful experience, and again, I'm giving the whole thing away, but his mother, the mother of the guy that passed away, I mean, in so many words, she basically forgives Tom Cruise's character and just says, you know, like, it was war, these things happen, and I mean, it's so life-changing for him, because he's carried this secret and this shame. I'm sure he probably came out with it in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's actually why he was there. I don't know if you know about the 12 steps. We did talk a little bit about it during our Simple Abundance year. But one of the 12 steps is making amends, and so I think that was part of what he was doing in AA, was going and talking to the parents. And so fortunately it turned out well, and his life changed after that experience, because just like Brené says, when you can really share your story, and he doesn't necessarily want to own it and broadcast it to the world, like, I'm a murderer and I killed this guy that was my friend, and like, you know, so it's not like he has to get up on a stage and say it, but where it really mattered, he had to make amends, and so that was very healing for him. So what is this resilience that she talks about? She shares it through a story of this situation where a reader wrote to her on her blog and was just not being very nice, and it hit Brené in a really negative way. And what she noticed was that she immediately went to anger and wanted to like lash out, because she said one thing about shame is that sometimes when you are addressed with it and you're backed into the corner, then you if you don't have resilience, then you will probably react in a way where you're gonna like lash back at the person, or shame them back. So I thought it was funny because she said that she was so angry that she drafted a couple of emails, and she shares them with us on page 43, and they're pretty funny, because I could see myself reacting in the same way, because I know about myself too that I am so quick to go to anger, and I didn't realize that about myself until just these past few months, and I've been really trying to work on it. And I don't think people think I'm a mean, angry person. But I even told you about when we were talking about gossiping and how like I have these conversations with myself about how angry I am about neighbors or some stupid thing about the parking or whatever. I'm pretty angry. Like I think underneath I'm just a pretty angry person, and I think I probably have been my whole life. And that's because she makes a really good point. When you have shame, and I told you my shame goes way back, I mean way, way back, that you if you don't have the capacity to sit with it and process it and acknowledge it, maybe it does make you feel bad. But if she mentions this thing about this email that she got that she was so upset about, she talked to a good friend about it, and she realized that the best thing for her to do was to cry, feel bad about it, get mad. She went out for a run. She talked to a friend about it, and then to delete the email and not reply, because nothing positive was going to come out of replying to this person, except for she probably would just get more angry. So her friend said, that's shame resilience right there. You know, like you sat with it, you acknowledged it, we talked about it, you worked through it, you ran, you got, you know, and then you just let it go. So everybody has shame, and it's about sitting with it. It's about sharing it. She mentions again, like she did in another section, being selective about who that person is that you talk to about the shame. You know, you have all different kinds of friends. So who is it that you feel like can hold space for your shame and help you bounce things off of them and really get to the bottom of like, wait a minute, what is really going on here, and how can I have a little bit of resilience around this area? And when she was telling this story about the email to she was teaching in a college, she even got more insight from a student who really reevaluated what she was saying about the situation, because in the situation she was mad and thinking that the woman that messaged her was criticizing her photography and like how, you know, I would never post a picture like that online. It was just not a favorable thing. But the student said something like, didn't the shame come from somewhere else? Wasn't it because it wasn't about the bad picture. You were ashamed because you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and open rather than closed and protected and somebody hurt you. So shame can come out of that. Like, look at my story from yesterday about my friend, or my so-called friend that I thought was my friend. I shared something personal and shameful, and I guess that wasn't the right person to say it to. And I was met with hurt and ultimately rejection, because like I said, our friendship ended. And yes, so that hurt me. And what did I do? I didn't have resilience. I just packed it away in this shame place where it's funny, the same place, but I meant shame place, like I just said. I put it into all the data that I have compiled over the years of like, well, if you know, you can't tell a friend that, then you can't tell a guy that, you know, because your friend didn't want to be friends with you, so that guy is not going to want to have anything to do with you. So there's a lot to this, and I am the perfect person to be reading this, and I think I need to read this chapter again because it's really well written, and I hope you're enjoying it if you are reading or listening to the tone that Brene writes with, because she's very personal, like I said. So what does shame look like? When it comes to understanding how we defend ourselves against shame, I have the utmost respect for the work of the Stone Center at Wellesley, Dr. Linda Harding. According to Dr. Harding, in order to deal with shame, some of us move away by withdrawing, hiding, silencing ourselves, and keeping our secrets. That would be me. Some of us move toward by seeking to appease and please. Okay. And some of us move against by trying to gain power over others, by being aggressive or using shame to fight shame, like sending those really mean emails if she had. Most of us use all of these at different times with different folks for different reasons, yet all of these strategies move us away from our story. Shame is about fear, blame, and disconnection. Story is about worthiness and embracing the imperfections that bring us courage, compassion, and connection. If we want to live fully without the constant fear of not being enough, we have to own our story. We also have to respond to shame in a way that doesn't exacerbate our shame. One way to do that is to recognize when we're in shame so that we can react with intention. And she'd mentioned in another part of the book that she knows when she's having one of those shame storms that I talked about, because her face gets all red and she can feel her heartbeat and all this stuff. So you might want to be thinking about when you notice how you feel sometimes. I probably get like this feeling in the pit of my stomach, you know. I definitely, when I'm emotional, I get pain in my throat. And then if I'm really stressed out, I have serious pain in my chest. So I'm noticing those somatic things that go along with certain emotions and experience. So here are some questions that she leaves us with at the end of this chapter. Who do you become when you're backed into the shame corner? How do you protect yourself? When do you call to work? Who do you call to work through the mean nasties or the cry and hides or the people pleasing? What's the most courageous thing you could do for yourself when you feel small and hurt? Our stories are not meant for everyone, just like I said earlier. If we have one or two people in our lives who can sit with us and hold the space for our shame stories and love us for our strengths and struggles, we're incredibly lucky. If we have a friend or a small group of friends or family who embraces our imperfections, vulnerability, and power and fills us with a sense of belonging, then we are incredibly lucky. We don't need love and belonging and story catching from everyone in our lives, but we do need it from at least one person. So yeah, I think I said in another video on the channel here that I have different groups of friends, and some are for socializing, and then I have my close friends who really know me deeply, and I feel like if I'm having a breakdown or anything, I can reach out to them and they're there for me. But would I talk to my trivia friends or, you know, other friends about what's really going on with me? Probably not. Like, I keep things light and on the surface with them. And I think everybody probably has different friends, you know, different types of friends. If we're working towards relationships based in love and belonging, and story, we have to start in the same place. Again, I am worthy. So, I guess to close for my own healing, if I think about the fact that I do have some friends that know me and love me, and I've shared how much love I've had from my friends, especially over the last year or more now, then why isn't that giving me more proof? Why am I guess I have more proof of to the opposite, but I should start somewhere, and I should be honoring that more and realizing that if there's some people out there that can love me and that I can belong with, then maybe that can translate further. But again, I'm not going to be like Elizabeth Smart and telling everything in a documentary or standing up on stage and saying all the things I don't want people to know. But I do feel, like I said in my video last night, I do feel like even if I could just have one relationship with a guy where I could just say it all and that he would still love me, then even if that relationship didn't work out, I feel like at least I'd have, well, I probably would blame it on the fact, I would be like, I never should have told him. No, But I do sort of feel like if I just had that relationship, then I could maybe move on to another one and know that, like, hey, somebody stuck around even though they saw me in my worst. And I don't know. I have to do a lot of healing before I even think about joining my life with anybody else. But that's it for the shame talk. Thank you for being here. Thank you for always listening to my ramblings. I'm glad that they are touching lives in some way. I appreciate all your comments. So until next time, I will see you then, and sending you lots of love.